Hello everybody, welcome back, C-Ray Tech here. In today's video I'm going to show you how to build and maintain a tiny whoop. So I'm building this because, well, I'm excited that I'm going to actually start racing. We have local races that started last month and we're going to be doing them every month, and I'm really excited to join. So if you guys follow my channel, you know that I fly mostly 7mm motors. I could say that's what I primarily use. And it's been a while since I've flown 6 mils. So I'm excited for this build. One, because it's been a while since I've flown them. Two, building this in hopes to be able to do some racing. So I'm going to go ahead and start going over each of the pieces of what you'll need, and we'll want to make sure that we're sticking to the MultiGP specs too. So just give me 1 second. Just want to make sure I bring up the specifications so that I can quote them all to you. Alright, so we have a 31mm max for our props. So we've got some BetaFPV 4-blade 31mm props. We're going to want to make sure we keep this all under 35 grams. And our max is going to be 25 milliwatts. So we're all set here. We got 25 milliwatts. I'm hoping that all of this together, once we're all said and done, will be under the 35 grams, which I'm pretty sure it will be. And we'll get started. So first off, I'm going to be using the BetaFPV Z01 camera. This is the updated version that has the video in and out, so we can use the BetaFlight OSD. And that's going to be located on our F3 flight controller. So this flight controller is for 1S batteries. Like I said, it's F3. It comes with BetaFlight installed, which also has BetaFlight OSD. So you'll notice here we've got our pins for our video. It goes video in and video out. I'm going to be utilizing these back 2 pads next to your battery pads. This is where I'm going to be attaching the camera. We're using 17,500 kV BetaFPV motors. BetaFPV canopy, carbon fiber frame stiffener, and the 65 frame. This is the updated version that holds the stick batteries, so that way we don't have to worry about the foam insert. That's going to help us a little bit, save some weight. Alright, and we got to make sure we have our rubber grommets for the frame and the screws. So to start for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I get my stack built. So I'm going to be attaching my camera, and I'm going to be using the same method that I did last time, which I used for the 65S, which, as you can see here, it comes with a pigtail, so I'm actually going to be wiring in another pigtail so I can directly connect the OSD portion of the camera. I'll be directly soldering the pins to the board, just like I did on this one for the 6mm build. Alright, so let's get started. Make sure that my soldering iron is heated up. Looking good there. I'm going to be using, I just got some of these Pico connectors, a whole bunch of them, so I'm just going to be using this. I think I might trim it down a little bit though. Alright, so in this case, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be using red for video in and black for video out. So when we go to install our camera, we're going to want to take note of which is which. An easy way to tell on this camera especially is you've got blue coming out of the camera, so that's going to be your video in, and then you've got orange coming out of your VTX, so that's going to be video out. So if you look at it this way, your video is coming in through the camera and out through the VTX. It's not as easy on some of the other cameras that have video in and out. Occasionally you'll find them, they'll actually have labeling on the boards, which is nice, but sometimes I know in the past, you know, if you don't have the documentation or some paperwork on you, it's a little bit more difficult. So we're going to go ahead and get this installed here. So I found the easiest way to do this is you'll want to have some rubber bands to hold the camera to the flight controller while you solder those pins on. So what I've been using is, I've got some of these little hair ties. So we'll set that aside so we can get this ready. And then we're going to go ahead and trim this lead down. Now this has fairly thick wire sheathing. It's not silicone on this one anyway. So they seem to hold up pretty good. I've not been using them long enough to see if the plastic cracks over time, but I'm not overly concerned about it. So we've got our pieces here, so now what we're going to do is we're going to tin these up. Sorry if my printer's making a bunch of noise. Gotta print those boss frames. Quick peek. Got a blue one that I just printed today. It's got a little bit of splitting here. I'm hoping that that's going to be okay. It doesn't seem to have affected the rigidity of the frame, but this is going to be a cool build. I've got some 816 motors that came in. I'm really excited to play around with those. So I'm going to be doing a little 8mm build pretty soon. So yeah, definitely stay tuned for that. Quick note, these helping hands are really nice. They are really helpful. I got them from Harbor Freight. Over time they will get loose. You'll notice that the alligator clips will begin to come off. Quick and easy fix for that is just to pinch them back down a little bit. Alright, so let's get this in here so we can tin this up. Now just quick note, the reason why I'm going to tin these is that it makes it a lot easier to solder. So all we're doing is we're kind of like wetting this end so that when we start hitting the pad, it really will take the solder a little bit easier. Alright, so we've got that all soldered up, or tinned up. So now what we'll do is we will move over to the flight controller. Now, I had previously had a camera installed on this one, so these pads have already been tinned here, but it never hurts to even add just a little bit more solder. Oh, sorry about my camera. Alright, so let's get a little bit of solder tinned on there, freshen these up a little bit. Alright, so like I said, we're going to be doing red for video in. So we'll go ahead and get that connected. And then we're going to be doing black for video out. So I'm going to go ahead and clean my solder tip. You always want to make sure that you're careful at this point because these solder pads are kind of close together and you definitely don't want to bridge anything because you'll put all this work into building your whoop and then you'll short it out. So, normally, at this point, hold on.
Where did you guys put my shimmer doll?
I'm not sure where your shimmer doll's at, but I'll come help you in a minute. Daddy's making a video, okay? Sorry about that, guys. So, normally at this point, I would throw some hot glue on this to protect it, but to save time, I'm going to wait on this. So I'm just going to leave this just like this. One thing you'll want to do, just to be sure and safe, is take a look at these pads here, make sure they're not bridged anywhere. I don't have a multimeter. I should have one, but I don't. So I actually visually inspect everything. So we've got our video in and video out wired in, so we're off to a good start. Now the next thing we're going to want to do is we're going to want to place our camera. Now we'll notice on the new version we only have the pins in the back, and those pins are going to set right down into those little pads. Sorry, I'll get this to focus. So you've got these little pads right next to your battery leads. You're going to want to set it right down into there. And like I said, what I've been doing sorry, I'll get this set in there. What I've been doing is once I get it set down in there, I'll take a rubber band, stretch it out real good, and then you can actually just set it on top of the camera and pop it underneath these little motor wires. Now be careful, you don't want your rubber band to be too strong. Pull these off. They're not indestructible. But one thing you'll definitely want to make sure that you do is when you go to solder this on, you're going to want to make sure your camera lines up with this front mount, because that solder is going to help with your placement. So we want to make sure that's nice and straight. And then all we'll have to do is throw a little bit of solder on it. So go ahead and get this clamped up. Get our soldering iron. By the way, I love this soldering iron. I got this one on Amazon. This is the SandSmart TS100. Awesome, awesome soldering iron. So okay, let's get in position here. Let me maneuver this a little bit so I can see it and get to it. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. So we're just going to go ahead and throw a little bit of solder. Now, you'll notice I'm pretty close to that rubber band, so we're going to want to be really careful there. So I'm going to just dab a little bit of solder on the iron at first here, and I'm just going to set this right on the edge here. Ooh, hands are super shaky today. Alright, so we're going to get a little bit of solder going on here. See, this is a little bit tricky, so you want to be really careful. I'm about to snap my rubber band. Sorry guys, my hands are just so shaky. And I bridged them. That's okay. We'll fix it. I gotta get this into a better position anyway. So let's clean this up, this mess up that we just made. So the easiest way to clean this up is going to be to pull the camera out. So let's go ahead and take our rubber band off. Alright, so we got our rubber band off. We're going to go ahead and clip this in real quick. So we can heat this up, pull this camera off. So we can separate these leads real quick. There we go. Alright, so clean our tip off. You can see those points are still bridged, I hope. You guys can see that. So we're going to go ahead and clean that off real quick. Oh, sorry. Alright, so we got those pads unbridged. Now this is going to make this a little bit more difficult now because we're going to have to clean these off and heat this up. So I think what I'm going to do, since I can't set it back in there right away, so I'm going to have to set these pads, or set these on the pads and apply pressure with my hand as I push it down. Now because we've got, sorry, I want to make sure you guys can see this. So because we've got alright, so got it almost in there. Let's apply a little bit more pressure on the one side. Alrighty. So we've got our pads, make sure, look at them. Not bridged, looking very nice and shiny. We've got our camera mounted in here. Make sure this is nice and straight, which it's not. So I'm going to have to change that a little bit. Alright, so we got that all nice and straightened out. Camera's mounted. Everything's looking good, no bridges. So now what we'll want to do is we'll want to ensure that when we plug this in, that it matches up to what we said it was going to. So we've got blue, remember blue, coming for the video in, that's going to red. We've got orange, which is our video out. It's going to our video out. So we should be good to go. Now we can do some testing real quick. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fire up my little FPV monitor. We're going to go ahead and put a LiPo on this. So fingers crossed, guys. Alright, no fires, no smoke. Let's scan for the channel. Alright, seeing some OSD on there, that's a good start. So to be honest, this is probably one of the hardest parts of this build. Outside of this, it's going to be pretty smooth sailing. So you can see I've got video signal, we're looking good. So I'm going to go ahead and unplug this, turn this off. And now what we're going to want to do is move over to our frame. Now, like I said, normally I would throw some hot glue on these solder points here just to kind of ensure that, you know, through vibrations and, you know, random mishaps, we don't break or end up making those solder points touch. But for the sake of time, I'm going to just wait on that. So now what we're going to do is we're going to take our rubber grommets, we have 4 of them, and we're going to install them on our frame. And these just push over top of the screw mounts. I'm going to set these on there, like so. Alright. So this is going to be our front, I believe. Let me see. Yeah, I think that's right. Yep. So we got our front here. So what we're going to do is we're going to route our battery power lead through here, so it sits in just flat. And you're going to want to kind of manipulate the frame a little bit so you can get this set between these 2 divots on these rubber grommets. So we'll go ahead and move the frame around a little bit so we can get this in there. Move the antenna out of the way and get this last one in there. Alright, so we're looking good. So now, with this canopy, you only need your 2 side screws. So what we'll want to do is we'll want to put in our front and back screw at this point. It is a little tricky putting it on the front with the camera there, but it can be done. So let's go ahead and screw these in. Now I recommend that you take your time. You don't want to not necessarily worry about cross starting as much as I am worried about bending and breaking this piece of the frame. So we're going to go nice and slow as we screw this in. Get that in there real good. Alright, so we got the first one in, looking good. So let's go ahead and put the back one in. Get this screwed in there real good. Alright, so we've got our camera set, we've got our motor, our front and back flight controller mounts in place, so we don't have to worry about those. We've made sure that we've either rerouted our antenna so that it's pointing up, or we have figured out a way to make sure it's not touching the board or too close to it, because this is really going to affect your range if you do that. So what I usually do is I'll take it and I'll curl just a little bit of the top down so I can put the canopy on. And go ahead and slide the canopy on. Now you'll notice with this canopy the camera tilt's pretty high compared. Now one thing that I've noticed with BetaFPV that they do is they'll actually set this on top here. That's not good. You shouldn't be doing that. What you want to do is you want to lift the camera up just a little bit so that you can slide the canopy underneath it just like that, so that the lens just pops out just a little bit. And that'll help center it, and you're looking just like that. So you'll take your set of screws for the sides. Go ahead and find our mounting holes. Alrighty. Sometimes you might have to kind of like bend this last screw in. So bear with me a second while I get this last one in. I think I'm just spinning my wheels here. Sometimes it's kind of a pain putting these on, but it's a little bit easier on the bigger frames. So here we go. Now we got it. So once again, like I said, you want to kind of like brace the frame as you're screwing these in at first, because until you get your threads created in the plastic, it's going to be a little difficult to screw in. Like I said, you definitely don't want to bend those. Oh, did I miss that on this side? It looks like I did. Let's get this side all nice and squared away too. I think it's a screw. Let me look in my pile of screws and see if I got one better one, because I think some of these are a little bit different in size. And this one looks a little bit better. So let's get this last part screwed in here. Oops. It's only because I'm filming. Any other time I would have already had this all done. So bear with me, guys. Sorry about that. Like I said, normally it wouldn't take me this long, but looks like we're getting it now. Alright, so our canopy is installed, our camera's installed, our flight controller's installed. Last but not least, let's get these motors in. So the first thing I do is I like to twist up my motor wires so it looks a little bit cleaner. So we're gonna set these out in their placement. Alright, so to do this, just lightly twist down here at the base, and then once you get that started, you can actually start twisting the wire up here. Now you want to be careful with these 6mm motors. The wire gauge is pretty small, so you always want to be really careful, because there's nothing worse than breaking one of these wires. It's such a pain in the butt. So we'll go ahead and route this through here. Set this in the motor cup. Well, this is another place you're going to want to be really careful. You're going to want to brace these struts as much as possible when you're pushing this motor in the cup. You don't want to bend these or mess them up at all. So what I like to do is I'll place my fingers covering all three of these and on the bottom, and I'll slowly push the motor into the cup. Once it's seated and looks good, we'll be all set. So we got that in there. So what I'll do is I'll install all 4 motors after twisting the wires. Set that one in there for now. Alright. And we're almost done. Almost done. We're almost done and ready to fly. Alright. we got our motors all, wires all twisted up, looking good. Alright, let's see. And with this, I will actually now have a 65, a 65S, oh no, I bent those, and a 75. These are kind of hard to get in there sometimes. Yeah, be real careful. Don't do what I did. I just bent that. I mean, it'll be fine, but it's not preferred. That'll weaken that part of the frame. Alright, so got our motor seated. Now let's route our wires. So all you'll need to do is plug these in. I gotta find them. I'm not sure where I put them, but I need this. I got some of these little rubber bands that'll hold the. They generally come with. Surprisingly, they don't come with motors. They'll come with frames sometimes. Occasionally, you can get them with as an add-on for some other things that you can buy. But you know, I haven't been able to find a place where you just buy these little rubber bands for the motors. But there might be somebody out there that's got them that I haven't found yet. So we got our motors plugged in. We're going to take our little rubber bands, make sure we have 4 of them. We're going to go ahead and stretch these on. We're going to want to place our motor wire like so, towards that strut. So we'll get all these on there. And this is just going to keep your motor wires from getting snagged and messed up. You definitely want to keep these protected. Get the last one on there. Alright, so now at this point what I usually do is I will take a screwdriver and I'll start pulling these wires in a little bit, just like that. Push them in, just kind of tuck them into the frame a little bit so they're out of the way. Just be careful when you're doing this. Take your time, no rush. This is going to make your build look cleaner. And this is also going to help you from, like I said, you don't want to snag a motor wire from hanging around out too far or get it sucked up in the prop or something like that. So got our motors all set, plugged in. Cable management is done. Got ourselves a whoop. Last thing to do is just throw the props on. So these are tri-blade or 4-blade props, and these are really good props. I like tri-blades too, and then I'll even fly with 2-blade props, but we're going to be using 4-blade props in this instance. So we're going to want to note our prop direction. So we're going to have, you'll notice that this prop here kind of pitches up like this. It's got to curve up like this. So we'll want to put this on this motor here. Prop number 1 is on. Let's go with this one here. Set that on there real good. Alrighty. Now, when you're installing these props, if you arm it and you go to take off and it sucks itself to the ground, you got your props on wrong. Easiest way to fix that is just to make sure that these two props are the same and these two props are the same. So you're going to want to make sure your motors match and you've got your props that match. If this one is the same as this one, it's not going to fly. Alright, so we've got our quad built. Now, I've made a bunch of other videos on how to actually set these up. This is going to be the FRSky version, so I'm not going to go through the actual setup part of the BetaFlight side. We're just going to be doing a build today. So now that we've got our build done, let's pretend that we've been flying it like crazy and it's been a whole lot of fun. We can install this too real quick. You know, and let's just pretend that we've been flying this thing for a couple weeks now. What should we be checking for before our flights? What should we be worried about maintaining to keep these things flying nice? So the first thing that I always check before I fly is I take a look at all my props. You'll want to make sure that there's no damage to them. You'll notice that, let me see if I can find one with some props that have some damage on them, but I think I've got some, the 40 millimeters. That'll be a good example. I do not. Well, the easiest way to check them is obviously you'll see if a whole prop is missing, but you'll notice that sometimes they'll bend here in a crash and it'll have a white line. You want to make sure if it's not broken, that you straighten that out, and that it's not weakened in here, because sometimes you'll take a crash and it'll blow one of these completely off and it'll fly really crazy because it'll be unbalanced. So I always check my props. Next thing I do is I check my camera. I make sure my lens is clean, I make sure I'm on a good band and channel, and I make sure my goggles are charged. There's a whole bunch of steps for that, but I always check that. And then I would look under here and make sure my flight controller hasn't popped up from this rubber grommet. If this happens, it can have effects on you arming, and it can have effects on flight and cause vibrations. So you'll want to double check that. The easiest way to do that is you can just look right under here, and you'll see if it popped up. So we've checked our flight controller, made sure that's set. We've checked and made sure that our props are good. Next thing we'll want to do is make sure that our motors are spinning freely and that we're not rubbing on any of the ducts. And in this case, we're looking good. So we're not rubbing on any of the ducts. Our motors are spinning freely. Everything's looking pretty good. The next thing that we're going to do is we're going to bind it to our we're going to turn on our transmitter, get a battery in it, and we're going to do a quick test to make sure that it's flying. So, alright, let's get this plugged in. Alright, it's a good sign. Alright, so we're working good there. Everything's good. We got our transmitters talking to it, which, like I said, I already went through and set all this up. I've made some videos I'll make reference to in the description, and I'll put cards up on how to actually bind and set up your BetaFlight side of things. So now we've got everything all set. So now our last thing we need to do is go ahead and weigh this bad boy. Now remember, we're going to have to stay under 35 grams in order to be able to compete in MultiGP. So for this one with the battery, we're looking at 28.6 grams. So we're well under the weight requirements. Like I said, we got our 25 milliwatt transmitter for our camera. We're under our 35 gram max. We've got our 31 millimeter props. We're all set. We're ready to race. So I think that's going to be all for me today, guys. If you guys have any questions about this build, if you have any questions about getting into MultiGP racing and some of the specifications and the things you need to know, definitely feel free to ask. If you could like, share, and subscribe this video, that would be much appreciated. I would really like to be able to help anybody new in getting into the hobby, and that's why I've been creating all these videos. All these build videos and reviews and instructional videos and everything are made to be able to get more information out to people, so as you enter the hobby, you can find answers to a lot of your questions quicker. I know that when I first started, there was so many people that helped me, and I was so appreciative of everybody that I wanted to be able to contribute and help out and give back. So if you want to start flying tiny whoops, if you want to start racing or just having fun, I've got a whole ton of videos on builds ranging from these 6mm builds up to custom builds, all the way up to some 8.5mm builds, so definitely check those out. But yeah, I think that's going to be it for me today. I really hope you enjoyed this video, and as always guys, fly safe and fly often.